What do gray clothes, cowboy hats, and the sounds of construction have in common? Welcome to Olympia. It looks like the CN Tower.
I am the best. I am the best swordsman. I am the best swordsman.
Hello, welcome to Olympia. This is what we wear here. And, yeah, it's canon. And welcome to another episode of the Best Swordsman series. I am your humble host, LCFR. Today we are getting into a deck that is quickly proving to be one of my new favorites to play. It was designed by a good friend of mine and a lodge brother we know lovingly as Salt. And after proving some early success on the ladder against New Public Menace Garo and really performing strongly against World Eaters like Erlen and Angron, who are very popular, we kept refining this deck and just had a hell of a season, just testing it up and down on the ladder. No practice mode, so it just got the most ruthless beat down kind of testing that it could. You know, this was like pit fight Perturabo. This is what we got for you.
War is unequivocal, uncaring, unforgiving, and blind. I hope you got a good look at that Warlord ability, because that is what this deck is all about. Pay no attention to the whispers of chaos. Our goal here is to use Perturabo's ability as often and efficiently as we can. To help us in this objective, we have stacked the deck full of cheap removal, direct damage cards, and cheap life gain. Basically all the cheap life gain in the game.
I like to play decks that pose you a big question while you're playing, that present some kind of challenge to you as you go. And this deck's challenge all the time, its big, resounding, echoing, haunting question is, do I shoot the enemy warlord? Or do I save my cannon to shoot a troop? Or try and scare my opponent away from playing a troop, knowing that I could shoot it? It's a good question. Warlord, troop. Warlord, troop. Every matchup is a little bit different, and you'll find from experience which ones will force you to just play very forward, very aggressive, just get them done and over with, and which ones benefit you a little bit more to try and hold that cannon back. This also depends on the context as well. Sometimes you don't have a chance to shoot second turn and then be ready and reloaded by a later turn, so it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you'll just have opportunities in the moment to determine whether is 6 damage now, right now, and then having nothing on the board, is that good enough to pass over to my opponent and let them play a threat? I have nothing on the board, my cannon's spent. Okay, well, you better be able to defend yourself next turn. A lot of planning has to go into what you're doing from turn to turn. You need to be confident that you're either putting out enough damage or that you've got enough missile fire to just erase anything that's trying to come for you. That's just the way of it. And as you learn that through experience, you'll know, when do I just try and kill my enemy completely? When do I try and slow roll this and control a board? Because that's what I need for victory. You should find good matchups in World Eaters, in Death Guard that aren't Mortarion, Corvus Corax, and Sons of Horus. Those are all fair or better matchups, and that includes Garo. You should not be afraid of running into Garo, but you should be prepared to put your thinking cap on and just be completely focused. It's a very, very challenging matchup and a very powerful warlord still. Be on guard. Alpha Legion, you'll want to play more aggressively, and you'll want to just try and keep troops rather than try and be removing the enemies, since they don't play particularly threatening troops often. Get in your own pit fight and figure out what works and what's your style. This deck can play with a big finisher too. It's been seeing success like that as well. I just like to play for the old-fashioned, let's just do it ourselves, roll up our sleeves and just punch and shoot. That's where I'm at. But you want to play Iron Circle? go for it. 8/8 vehicle frontliners make a lot of people upset. Let me show you my favorite cards from the deck, the cards that do the most heavy lifting for me.
This is one of the most efficient removal tactics in the game. It is not only good in the early game against virtually all of the troops that most legions can put forward, but it's also good in the late game against certain trick cards like Helios Mortar Carrier, so it always has some value. Just as cheap as superior firepower, but requiring a little bit more planning, 5th Support Squad is great for finishing off a half-dead enemy troop or helping Perturabo basically deal 4 damage to an enemy. This is another super efficient removal piece. Pretty awesome because it recycles back into your deck and you would be surprised how often you'll get to see it again, or it'll show up late game and basically increase your odds of drawing a gold stone for lethal if you think about it. We only run one of these because it's a little bit expensive and it can either be held in hand to remove very hard to remove vehicles, or later in the game, usually when you've got 7 energy or more, you can deal 10 damage to the enemy with Perturabo. And my favorite Iron Warriors card, Viral Bombs. This card's a little tricky to understand when you read it, so let me just show you what it actually means. When a troop dies, deal 1 damage. Now that's cumulative, so 1 troop dies, 1 damage. 2nd troop dies, additional damage.
It's time for decimation.
So that means, okay, 2 damage. 1 troop dies, another 1 damage. Dead. Okay, now let's count them. Ready? 2 damage. 1 troop dies. 2 troop dies. Oh, another 2 damage. Oh, 2 more died. Oh, I'm losing track. Okay, more troops are dying. They just keep going. Because we killed how many troops? Yeah, however many we needed to kill. Count. Opponent doesn't have a board, but you do? No problem. There they go. You can totally pair this with your own troops, and you should. Bring them decimation. But Iron Warriors don't digress, so back to the good cards. This is the only Iron Warriors legendary the deck runs. My only recommendation is to use it judiciously. You don't want to throw it down and then give your opponent a chance to draw it over 3 or 4 turns or something. It's best used for lethal, but you need to use it earlier, use it. This is a trick card that needs to be used with some meta knowledge. If you know that your opponent is going to throw down, say, the Raven on 9 energy, or is playing Horus and can maybe deal lethal to you with a fast Grogger squad, or World Eaters with a Cirque Landspeeder, you play this card. It may not save you, it may not stop the damage, but it will slow them down and force them to expend resources. And while not an Iron Warriors card, you can find this in Extermination crates. It's a cool new draw card available to the neutrals. You have a less than 50% chance to actually deal the 3 damage, but in testing I found that it was just a little bit easier on your energy curve than Abandoned Supplies, and the chance to deal damage seemed better than picking up a second card as you would with Lecticio, but play any card draw you like if you don't like playing Void Engagement. And this is a deck variant if you're missing the neutral legendaries, Jubak, Melgator, and Ekratrez. Still a very viable deck. And this is the deck with no legendaries. You'll only need 2 pairs of epic cards. welcome back to your regular scheduled programming with color and sound. This is a fantastic match against an equally fantastic opponent. As you can see by his beautiful War Master card back, he has just come off of taking down the March season on the ladder, and this is a match from early April that really acted as a strong proof of concept. As you can see from the opening hand, we've gone for a full hand of removal. We're not typically keeping troops that aren't also doing some form of removal or giving us life. So you usually don't keep the high-end troops in the opening hand. Alpha Legion's an exception to keep more troops because once you stick a troop against Alpha Legion, they actually have a hard time killing it. But in a matchup like this, Garo, we want to weather the storm and we want to make sure that we can kill everything that hits the ground. We want to really run him to the ground and burn him out of resources. And we don't do that by gaining life so much as we do by creating a wide health differential between the two of us. And obviously this becomes a fairly easygoing turn on account of lucking out with our two of a kind of our 5th support squad. And you'll notice when you look at the energy curve, it is mostly in the 2 and 3 area because we are always going to be the energy starved deck. That's just sort of that's what happens when you're low initiative, but lean into that and then be the reactive deck. You have to just be conscious of your energy curve. And Garo, of course, is still, you'll see over the course of this match too, it's an extremely challenging matchup. It just requires you to be very conscientious of how much damage he can do, or be willing to take some risks and lean in a little bit. If you don't believe he can pull out those 13 damage turns, then you can push it even a little further than we go sometimes. In this hand, you see that we have options. We can deal direct damage, we can heal, we can lay down a threat, we can load our gun and do stuff, and often, what I like to be doing often is loading the gun and doing stuff. And the reason I'm removing the las rifle section is because, in theory, he's capable of dealing 13 damage in a turn using Vengeance and Goldstone's Hunters, and I'll let you do the math on that one. But if you're aware of his range and you respect his range, warlords are like wild animals. These loyalist warlords are anyways. And this is a turn where you have options again. You can expand the health differential however you please, or take a really conservative route as I did, which was, instead of putting the opponent down to 2 life, to remove the enemy troop instead, out of fear that there's an unlikely combo like Goldstone Hunters and Firian Auxiliary, which would let him draw the game, and I really just wanted to crack a win out of this one. If you can count how much damage is likely, you can push more aggressively and avoid a couple extra turns like I spend here. Because when Garo has this much more health outside of your lethal zone, he can start to run away and heal up. Though, do note that he's drying up. He's only got 3 cards left to weather our storm. And having 15 life against a Garo who's just sitting on 3 cards is a little bit more comforting, although you have to be mindful, here's Vengeance. You hadn't seen it yet. Expect that he'll play it. Expect that he'll play Endurance. If you know the worst cards that Garo can use against you, and you're aware of it, or you're willing to take the consequences should you play into them, there we go. That's a double Vengeance. And he decided to play a little bit too aggressively here, given how low he's running on resources, and to assume that I wouldn't be able to commit 12 damage to him. Typically, he would expect that at 7 energy, if my gun is loaded, I'll be able to deal him 13. But in this case, he knows I need a couple more cards in hand, and he knows that his resources won't take him further, so he's just got to be the aggressor and try and close it out, hope that I don't have those cards. You're playing odds at that point, but he knows that he's a dead duck if he doesn't try and put something my way, because Garo's just going to wind down off of only 2 cards.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you do try that at home. Have some fun with it. Run wild on the ladder in May. Let there be an Iron Warriors renaissance. Let's be grumpy, let's be bitter. Let's just keep being good to each other, of course, but grumpiness and bitterness, we'll brood. That's what we'll do. We'll brood. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. I've also uploaded links to my Twitter as well as my Ko-Fi if you ever feel like I'm in desperate need of a coffee after a bad public bashing by a bot.
Well, that's another slash on my face. Thanks for tuning into the Best Swordsman series. Catch you on the ladder.